welcome back to our C++ programming course. This is week 2, and today we are covering data types, declaration, scope, and initialization. By the end of this lesson, you understand how C++ stores and handles different kinds of data, how to properly declare and initialize variables. Let's jump in. Now, this week our goals are to be introduced to C++ types, to understand fundamental types such as Boolean, characters, integers, floating points, and void, to explore data sizes, to learn how to learn about declarations, including declaring multiple names, understanding scope, and initializing variables. Now, what are data types? Data types represent the various forms of data in C++. Examples include integers, floats, and booleans. This helps the computer to know what type of data you are working with and how much memory is to allocate. Now, categories of data type. Now, data types fall into these categories: integral types, arithmetic types, user-defined types, and built-in types. Now, for the integral types, those are integers, characters, booleans. For the arithmetic types, they're integral and floating point types, and user-defined types such as enumerations and classes. Then the built-in types are the fundamental types, pointers, and references. Now, move on to slide 7. Slide 7 are data sets and sizes. Now, each data type has its data set, the range of values it can store. Now, integers, which are whole numbers, or integer which are whole numbers. Float, which are decimal numbers with single precision. Yeah, then double, those are decimal numbers with double precision. Characters, letters, numbers, symbols. Boolean, either true or false. String, a combination of characters. Now, data size refers to the amount of memory used. For example, integer takes 4 bytes, float takes 4 bytes, double takes 8 bytes, character takes 1 byte, then boolean takes 1 byte, while string takes 32 bytes. You can use the size of bracket open bracket close keyword in C++ to check data sizes. Integer types. Integers are numbers without decimals. For example, negative 6,728, or 0 or 78. So, positive integers do not have a plus sign in front of them. No comments are used within an integer. Comments are used for separating items in a list. Here's an example over here. Data types include iostream using namespace std, int me, parentheses, int x equals 25, return 0. So floating point types. Floating point types represent decimal numbers they come in. So example is float, that's simple precision. Double precision, the long double is extended precision. An example, here's an example of a float, double. So boolean types. A boolean stores results of logical operations, that's true or false. It's also known as bool and has two values, that's the true and false. True represents 1 or yes, whilst false represents 0 or no. Here's an example of it. Such that include iostream using namespace std int main. Bool, it is raining equals true. So when you run this, bool is equals to true. Now, character types. Characters are the smallest integral type and are enclosed in single quotes. Each character is enclosed in single quotes. That says a blank space is a character and it is written with a single quote with a space left between the single quotes. Here's an example, that's the character gender. Now, string types. A string is a sequence of characters enclosed in double quotes. Here's an example of that. and a void. A void represents the absence of information. It's often used in functions. So here's an example of it. I mean, this will not be in your code. Signed and unsigned. Signed types store double positive. Sorry, it stores both positive and negative numbers. Now, when it comes to the unsigned, it stores only non-negative values. Now, here's an example of the signed. Then, an example of the unsigned. Now, other fundamental types, that's short, which is 2 bytes, long 2 bytes, long 8 bytes, and composite types like pointers, arrays, and references. User-defined types include classes and enumerations representing specific sets of values. So, declaring multiple names. You can declare multiple variables of the same type in one statement. Here's an example of it. Scope. Scope defines where a variable can be accessed. Long scope inside functions. Global scope outside functions. Class scope inside classes. Then the namespace scope is inside namespaces. Statement scope is inside code blocks. So here's an example of a scope in code blocks, C++. Now, declaration. In C++, variables must be declared before use. You can also initialize them without starting values. So here's an example of the declaration. This is another example. Initialization. Here's an example of initialization. Now, there are many ways to initialize. There are a lot of ways to initialize. So here's a wrap up for week 2. Now I understand the C++ type, scope, declaration, and initialization. In the next session, we're moving on to operators and expressions. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave your questions in the comments. See you next time.